All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Just to let you know that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. If you're not comfortable with being recorded, you can turn your cameras off or change how your name appears on the screen. And over to you, Mayor O'Connor.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone. So tonight, this isn't quite as formal of a meeting as we typically have, but it is the budget engagement meeting. That's part of the 2024 budget process. And I want to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional unceded ancestral territory of the Ntlaka'an people. We have here tonight council. Of course, we have Councillor Toss on Zoom again this evening, and it looks like we have some guests here to listen. So our CFO, Diane Momberquette, is going to be presenting to us. So I think I'm just going to turn it over to you to begin.
Great. Thank you very much, Mayor O'Connor. If you could share your screen.
Oh, yes. I have some new duties, and that's okay.
She's assisting me.
Do it.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our 2024 community engagement session for the budget. So we're just going to go over a couple of different things tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the timeline for the budget. We'll go through a little bit of the municipal budgeting 101, and then some specifics about our budget in particular for the upcoming year. And then we'll transition a little bit and start talking about property taxes and how it kind of impacts that. So I just went through the first slide, so now we're on to the second slide.
Thank you.
So that was the agenda. So now the next slide, please. This is the budget timeline for this year. And so we try to stick to this as much as we possibly can. Sometimes something gets in the way of it. So on February the 14th, we had a report to council seeking some direction on preparation of the budget. And at last night's council meeting, we just did a bit of a review of property taxes and how they're calculated and what all goes into those rates. And so then tonight is our community engagement session. And so after this evening, some highlights of the budget will be on the website, and there'll be an opportunity for folks to review that and submit any questions or comments that they may have for the budget. We'll then, as staff, will kind of take all those comments and kind of incorporate those into a draft 5-year financial plan that will come to council for them to take a look at on March the 26th. On April the 9th, we'll do the first 3 readings of the 5-year financial plan bylaw. And on April 23rd, we'll do the adoption of that bylaw and the first 3 readings on the tax rate bylaw. Hopefully pass the tax rate bylaw by May the 7th. So in the way that the timelines kind of stack up, May 15th is the deadline for the property tax bylaw. It must be adopted by that time. And the 5-year financial plan needs to be adopted before the property tax rate bylaw. So that's the reason for sort of the order of those items. So in terms of how the budget's developed, so this is just a bit of an overview on the budget itself. So the budget is developed by the staff. So we take an opportunity. We met, I think it was back in the beginning of December, as a staff group and talked about some of the priorities that we had. And then we shared those with council and heard from them on what their priorities were. So we incorporate that into the original draft budget, which is what we're going to take a look at tonight. That's the information that's going to be presented to the community for comments and input. And then after we incorporate that, then council approves the draft budget, incorporating any input received and also any additional information that we receive, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of things going on and we get more information every day that affects the budget. So we'll continue to refine it up until the time that it's adopted so that we have the, kind of the best numbers possible that we can. And then just to note that in addition to the regular operating revenue and expense, the budget also includes special projects and capital expenditures and items like that. So for Lytton specifically, just because of where we are with in the rebuilding phase, the majority of our efforts at this time are focused on rebuilding, and that budget is outside of this one. This is the core budget that is used to determine the property tax rates primarily. So just a couple of other quick points. A municipality cannot run a deficit, so we cannot have a budget that has a negative, more expenditures than revenue. So if that is the case, we need to transfer funds from a reserve to cover that. And we do have some reserves in place, and this current year is not going to be a deficit, so we don't need to worry about that. We'll actually contribute a small amount to reserves if everything goes according to plan. But we have a number of reserves already, and the reserves can be established for a specific reason. So sometimes a council will set up a reserve to save for a future capital expenditure, something big that might be coming on the horizon. Or then just generally, if there's a surplus at the end of the year, we generally transfer that into kind of a general operating reserve that could then be drawn on in a year when there wasn't a surplus. And that things like a big snow year, when you have like a bunch of additional snow clearing expenses or things like that you don't necessarily budget for, but can occur from time to time. So
That's twice. I apologize. Glasses on for that.
there, we skipped my revenue chart. So this is just a demonstration of something we've been talking about for a while now. So over the next 3 years, we still have contributions into our operating budget from some funding that we received from municipal affairs to assist Lytton in recovering from the fire. And then in 2027, that's the first year that funding is no longer available. So that will be the year that revenue sources will return to sort of historical levels. And we'll be having some conversation and doing some work around that in the not too distant future. So prior to the fire, Lytton's budget was about 1.4 million. In 2024, it's going to be 2.029. That includes $700,000 from municipal affairs. The other thing that it includes, there's a grant that we've received fairly consistently called the Small Communities Grant, around $350,000. So that's included, but we haven't included other grants that we may apply for or we may be eligible to receive, because we wanted to remain conservative when we're doing this, particularly when you're doing the revenue budget. You don't want to count on things that then don't come in. And a lot of the grants that we apply for, such as the one that we talked about at the council meeting last night for the EOC, a lot of those grants we apply for have specific expenditures attached. So they can't just go in to cover general expenditures. So we haven't budgeted for those at this time. And as they come in, we can adjust the financial plan. Next one. It's just a breakdown of the revenue sources for 2024. So see a large amount of our revenue from government transfers. That's the 700,000 plus the other 344. A couple other little things. We have the sale of services at 176. Investment income and other income. The other income in 2024 is just an estimate of insurance proceeds for the contents insurance. We really don't know at this point what that number is, but I just wanted to put a placeholder in. And once we get that final claim settled, we'll adjust the plan for the correct number. And then the property taxes of 358,945. On the government grants, I've already spoken about most of this. So just the 700,000 in 2024, and then for 25 and 26, it goes up to 1,025,000 in each of those 2 years. Last year, we received 619,000 under a program called the Growing Communities Fund. It hasn't been announced this year, so I didn't put it in. That would be the type of thing, if we do hear about that would come into the budget before we brought it forward for approval. But we've not received any information on it at this time. And then we have the Small Communities Grant at 344. The property tax revenue, 340,000. 340,000 is the number that comes from the actual property taxes. On the previous slide, you might have noticed that the revenue number for property taxes was 358. That includes penalties and interest that we charge on property taxes, as well as the payments that we receive on primarily federal lands that are occupied by federal organizations. We get what's called a payment in lieu of taxes. And so it's not part of our property tax calculation, it's outside of it, and it's included in that 358 number. So just to explain that difference in case anybody picked up on that. The revenue from property taxes is budgeted at an increase of 6%. We've talked about this in previous meetings. You know, at this time, the preliminary tax roll shows a 41% increase in assessed values, 26.2 million in 2024, over 18.5 million in 2023. So pretty significant increase. The tax rate will be adjusted to generate the 6% increase in total revenue. It's not a 6% increase in the rate on top of a 41% increase in the value, just to make sure we're clear. So it's just a 6% increase in the resulting revenue number from that. So, and then, you know, one of our other kind of significant areas where we get fees and charges is through our water and wastewater department. And so we're still budgeting a fairly low number for 2024. We're not sure how quickly some of the properties will come back online. And, you know, over the next couple of years, that revenue number will start to build again as more and more properties are rebuilt and connected to the system. So flipping over to the expense side of the equation, this again, just a little pie chart to kind of show the breakdown. General government includes everything from finance to IT to council to the corporate office, those types of activities. Protective services, of course, is fire and building inspection. Planning and development, we do have, we don't typically have much in terms of a planning and development budget, but just given all the rebuilding that's going to happen, it's significant enough to recognize in this budget. The public works at 196,000. Parks, Rec, and Culture, again, very small right now because we don't have a lot of parks reestablished and that we're maintaining, but that's an area that will grow in the future. And then the utilities, that's the water and the sewer departments combined, coming in at 262,000. Capital and project expenses, like I said, we don't really have much for capital budgeted in this budget because it's all in the rebuilding budget. What we do have is, sorry, these numbers aren't correct. I'm going to have to update this. They didn't get updated from a previous version. The official community plan is actually budgeted in the budget at 175, not 100 that's on here. The debt repayment is $9,100. That's an existing wastewater plant loan from a number of years ago, and we're very close to the end of it. And the actual transfer to reserves is not 841,000, it's 84,000. So I apologize that this slide is not correct, but we can get that corrected.
I appreciate you catching that.
Yeah. Well, it's a big difference between transferring 841 and transferring 84, right? So I was just very happy when I saw it was a surplus. So, you know, so that kind of deals with the 2024 budget for the 1 year. But when we're setting the 2024 budget, the community charter requires council to adopt a 5-year financial plan. So it includes the next year budget plus the following 4 years kind of forecasted out or projected out. And so each one of those years has to balance to zero. So again, we kind of look at, you know, if there's a surplus, we put it into the reserve. And if there's a deficit, we kind of take it back out to make that work. Right now, what we've included in the 5-year financial plan is really kind of a similar situation, except for the expenses that clearly are going to vary with more residents living in town. So the water and sewer, the revenues go up, the expenses go up as well. But the majority of the expenses were just increased by kind of an inflationary number over time. I think once when we're closer to kind of the end of 2024, we'll be in a better position to kind of start making those plans for the future Village of Lytton corporation and what it's going to look like. in 27, 28, we're going to have an operating deficit that we're going to need to, it's going to need to be funded by either a significant increase in property taxes or transfers from reserves. So increases in taxes could mean more assessment that we are, a new assessment that we don't currently have, or it could mean an increase in rates. Those are the two options, or like I said, a transfer from the reserves. And then just moving on quickly to property taxes 101. And I know that you guys heard this last night at the council meeting, but some of the other folks watching might not have been on. So, we go through with the BC assessment provides the preliminary tax roll. So that's the values that they've assessed all the property at. This is prior to anybody launching an appeal, which may result in a tax assessment being reduced. The final tax roll will be received in late March. At this time, our rates are up, or our assessment values are up 41%. That's being led by vacant residential land is up 87%. So they do split out for us the vacant land and the single family dwellings. So you can see the difference in where the increase is coming from. And we've got the 6% increase in revenue, so we'll determine that rate once we have the final values. So just as a quick example, the next for property taxes, we put a math. So if our, in 2023, our residential revenue was 52,000. So in a 6% increase in 2024 would make it 55,905. So if our preliminary assessment value for residential is 15,084, that would result in a tax rate of 3.7062. So the tax rate is a function of the assessed value divided by 1,000. That's how you kind of break it down that way. And then you take your total revenue and divide it by that number. It gives you your tax rate. So at this time, our tax rate is 3.7062. And then on top of that, we would add the taxes that we collect on behalf of others. I think it's the next slide. There we go. So in addition to that residential tax rate, we will receive rates and dollar values from some of these organizations that we will have to levy on top of our tax rate. So Thompson-Nicola Regional District, the Thompson Regional Hospital District, Police and School, Municipal Finance Authority, and the BC Assessment Authority. So some of those organizations will give us an actual rate that will just add on to ours, and some of them will give us a dollar number that we will spread across our assessed value and collect it that way. So we just collect that from the residents and forward it straight on to those organizations. That's kind of how that works. So, and that is the end of the presentation about the actual process itself. I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments.
Anyone have any questions? Is there anybody watching us from Zoom with any questions? I don't see any hands up.
I don't see anything in the chat either, Mayor O'Connor.
Okay, well, thank you.
So if you want to flip over to the next slide, just in terms of the next steps, if anybody does have any questions, this will be posted on the website after I correct that slide. And there's also going to be a summary document posted if people it's 6 pages long instead of however many this is. We're happy to receive any questions or feedback, and it doesn't, we can, if you just want to ask a question, we can answer whatever question you might have about the budget, or submit it. So that's going to cfo@lytton.ca. And if any of those are kind of, suggestions for changes or information for council, we'll be compiling that all into a report to bring forward at a later date.
And this says people have till March 11th.
That's correct. Yes, this will be open until March the 11th. We'll be taking that feedback.
Okay. Good. Your email address there. Yeah. That was short and sweet.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, I could tell you lots more about it, but those are the high points.
Nobody has any questions out there in Zoom land?
We can stop sharing. Maybe we can see them.
Have here. Oh, right. We can stop sharing. I have my glasses on to do that, but that's okay. There we are. Good. Well, I'm sure people will be watching this on YouTube
Mhm.
and watching it later. So hopefully if anybody has any questions,
Yeah,
they will get those into you.
yeah, we're happy to entertain those for sure.
Mhm. Okay, well, that was it for the 2024
Okay.
budget process.
There we go.
And I guess that is it. So short and sweet, as I said. So thank you, everybody who joined us this evening. And hopefully we'll see you again at a future meeting.